Hi, it's Hoa. I'm back again. I have something really important to talk about. It's a subject we rarely discuss because it can make us feel uncomfortable. Sexual harassment at the workplace.
You know, and I'm like, why does this person keep pressing up against me? And I realize that you have all this fucking space here, and I see his penis out.
And Harvey, blessed Harvey Weinstein, whose tattoo I still have on my bum.
I think the government should stay off the gold standard so that the pound can reach a level that will keep our exports competitive.
The lady has foolishly attempted to join the conversation with a wild and dangerous opinion of her own.
Welcome to Last Man on Earth. My name is Lex Durgan. As always, I'm flanked by Matt Ralston. Matt's just returned from the Dennis Hoff funeral in Nevada. Why do only the good die young? Matt wailed as he threw himself on Hoff's bloated, gruesome pimp body at the funeral. You do realize, Matt, that's how herpes is transmitted. You were a big Dennis Hoff fan, weren't you?
Oh,
he's dead.
Yeah, I saw he was dead, and you never want to have that thought of, oh, good. But that was
somebody's dead.
Yeah, it seems like bad karma, but I don't know. That was just kind of my thought. Was like, well, fuck it. You know, like someone always finds something good to say about someone when they die. But
yes,
I don't know if this is a case. Like, I didn't really see that.
He actually had a bunch of I think it was all city officials and county officials he paid off. He was very popular in the area because I assume he passed a lot of cash around. But outside of those business connections, I don't see that he had many friends. Although I assume he set a lot of people up like Lamar Odom with fucking free sex and stuff all the time. But the best part of the story is that his body was found by Ron Jeremy. That's
oh god,
that's just like a
a bleak scene.
Yes, an old Ron Jeremy after banging like six.
Under how many bodies do you think Ron Jeremy has found?
A lot
in his lifetime.
Well, he almost died 4 or 5 years ago. He had 8 massive heart attacks and somehow he died. I don't know how these guys live, but he had just a series of a successive number of massive heart attacks in a row, and he still survived. He still survived somehow.
I mean, when you see him in person, you wonder how he is still alive. It's troubling.
Yes,
it can ruin your day to simply lay eyes on the man.
He had a branded liquor a couple years ago. He was like a rum, like Ron Jeremy rum or something. He was that's all they've come up with. It's really sad. It's like NFL stars or athletes when they're past, when they retire and they kind of get, especially in the old days when they got all crippled and they could barely walk and everything. You kind of didn't want to see them anymore.
Yeah,
that's sort of like porn stars should be like Logan's Run. They should be put out when they're 35. It's not a pleasant watching ex-porn stars age.
Which they usually are out by then, but obviously occasionally you get the straggler that makes it through. Did Hoff have sex with the girls?
Not that he talked about. I think he was married the whole time. They had all these hooker parties for him for his birthdays and stuff on the HBO show. But I don't know that he actually slept with he wasn't I don't think he was Hefner. I don't think he was married to 7 other prostitutes.
Yeah, I would think you'd want to.
He was just a gross fat dude who was a pimp.
Republican, by the way. The party of judging other people.
Yes.
Of course.
And somehow, Lamar Odom survived his evening at the Bunny Ranch.
So are they going to close the ranch now?
No. I assume it makes a lot of money. And I assume every single politician there has paid off some amount of cash off that place. This week's show is sponsored by the Saudi royal assassination team. So many countries' secret state police have black ops teams, but how many travel in tailored Armani suits and feature a bone saw expert?
So these are our closest allies.
Yes. The Saudi royal assassination team, dirty deeds done dirt cheap. Did you read the apparent transcripts of the interrogation that went on?
Oh, no, I didn't.
Yeah, so apparently, this all comes from Turkey, who claims they have audio. It's weird. How do they have audio of the assassination in the consulate? But somehow they have audio.
It's probably just a mystery science theater, B movie.
Yes, maybe. Well, I guess I think what happens is they bug the consulates, right? Mm. But then they can't admit that they bugged the consulates. So when they have the guy being cut up with a bone saw, they can't really say, obviously we have this and this is gruesome, because then how would they explain they have it? But apparently the shit's leaking out, and they said that now that Khashoggi had his hands cut off while he was still alive.
Yeah, I think they're into the cutting off hands thing. I think that's one of their moves.
Yeah, I wasn't joking about one of the guys apparently is a bone saw expert, like someone on the Saudi ops team is comes in with like a various saws and stuff, and that's his expertise. It's just, I mean, if you have that on your team, it's not like the guy is multi-purpose, like he has multiple jobs he does. Like he also answers phone calls. he's just the guy who cuts limbs off.
He was just a surgeon, and someone came in and said, "I think I got a better gig for you."
Yes.
When I was in high school, we got I didn't, but some friends rented one of those Faces of Death videos.
Yes.
And
I won't watch those.
Well, I didn't really know what to expect, so in the first minute, they show a militant Muslim guy cutting off a guy's hand.
Yes.
And I was like, I'm out. But it's been burned into my brain.
Yeah.
And I was like 16. I wasn't 4 years old.
I gotta watch one of was it Daniel Pearl, I think? Was that the one they broadcast, the beheading?
I didn't watch that.
I watched it, and it was just like, it's that you will never forget. I mean, there's a reason why they do it, obviously. Now, this one was done in private, so they're not taking video. It's not for the world to be shocked and terrified. Obviously, it's just for fun, for sports.
Yeah, I mean, why couldn't they just put a bullet in his head?
I mean, you think about the mafia. The mafia would just put plug two in the back of his head. They would just, they might cut him up afterwards, but cutting him up while he's alive just seems particularly gruesome. Now, I didn't realize
like the whole organization. It's not like one rogue guy.
No.
It's like they're higher ups in the government, as far as I understand, were like, well, let's just cut. We'll start with cutting off his hands.
Yes.
Coffee.
And by the way, let's invite him to the Saudi consulate, and he walk in and never walk out again. So they're not even really hiding the fact that they killed him.
Why do we associate with this fucking bullshit country?
I don't know. Well, they got a lot of oil and money and some other shit. I don't know. They're actually like probably the worst country in the entire world, but they're like rich.
Israel's kind of up there.
Yeah. Oh, dude. Oh, you're gonna lose your hand. Mossad will not. So Mossad is smart enough not to invite you to the Israeli embassy and then kill you inside the embassy.
Right.
Like the Saudis, I was hearing stuff about the Saudi, like the militaries. Like they're very brutal, but they're not very smart.
Right.
So they do shit like this. They just don't think like, okay, well, let's trap them in the Saudi embassy, as opposed to like take them in a dark alley where it might be up in the air as to who killed them.
Well, what's scary is they're that confident, or I guess confident is the word. Like when they detained the journalists last year, in the Hilton or whatever it was. They're very brazen.
Yes.
And so, like, how many times have they done this? Like, yeah, we found out about this one.
Dude, they're a country ruled by a king. It's 2018, and they're actually ruled by a king.
It's insane.
It's crazy. Do not forget to become a patron of the show on patreon.com/Last Man on Earth. Thanks to all new patrons. We will accept Saudi patrons. If whatever bin Salman, Mohammed bin Salman wants to
MBJ,
MBS,
MBS,
MBS.
Sounds like a disease.
He has like 37 sons. He can go with another son. They're all corrupt. You can't name me a place ruled by a king that isn't corrupt. Like a good kingdom. There are no good kingdoms.
Narnia? I don't
know. No, the king was horrible there, Matt. Come on. Thanks to all new patrons. Go to patreon.com. Get on the shit now before it disappears. If you wish to contact the show, hit us up on Twitter at Last Man Podcast or on Facebook, also Last Man Podcast. All right, on to the show. I know for a fact that you are 1/16th Native American.
That is true.
You wrote an article about this, although not DNA tested, by the way. So you could be bullshitting.
No,
Did you ever meet your great grandmother? You didn't meet your great grandmother.
No, I never met my grandmother. But people of humble means, such as my mother's family, they have no reason to lie about shit like that.
No, no.
You know.
Well, up until like 20 years ago, claiming Native American heritage was really bad.
Right.
Like you were like sent away. You were like locked up in a reservation, or you were like, I mean, they were doing eugenics up until like the early 80s on reservations where they were like actually like encouraging abortions and things like that of like Native American kids. So being Native American until probably like, affirmative action kicked in well and political correctness in the 90s at least It was pretty shitty. So it's only a latter-day thing that people are actually claiming to be Native American or claim to be black or claim to be part whatever it is. Multiracial was not a good thing until recently.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't like you got no benefits from it, let's say.
No. I mean, the only cultural heritage I got is my mom would cook really weird Okie food, such as like dumplings.
Were they from Oklahoma?
Yeah.
Okay, that's legit. If you're from Oklahoma, you're definitely part Native American.
Yeah.
As you pointed out, all the states in the Southwest are either named after Mexico, Spanish, or Native American names. But if you're from Boston,
Orange
County, not a good chance. Well, I guess Orange County, like 300 years ago, was all Hispanic. So Elizabeth Warren, for some reason, I don't understand her whatsoever. I know you like her politics, her general political philosophy.
I do.
But there's something about people like that are politicians that I feel like they weren't qualified for the job of politician. Like, there's something you need to be a politician that, like, there's a skill, and it's mostly lying. You have to be really good. You have to be particularly good at. And I feel like a lot of people somehow rise, especially in the Senate. It seems like in the Senate, they rise to a level in the Senate, and they're just not very skilled with, like, lying. They're like not good liars.
Yeah, well, they're good fundraisers and campaigners, right?
Yeah, and often they come from means or they come from money. They're all basically from Ivy Leagues, and they're all connected and all that crap. But when you see them lie, they're all horrible liars. Like, you just think, oh God, that person's lying.
This is essentially a lie.
Yes.
That she's a Native American.
Yes,
and she's now spinning it in a way that she's like, "See, I told you," and her proof is like the opposite of proof. Yeah. I mean, she goes back 6 to 10 generations, meaning she's between 164th and 2048th Native American. And she's like, look, I told you I'd produce this document. And it's like, okay, so by that criteria, I'm pretty sure half the country is Native American.
I think the average European person who's been here for 300 years, has more Native American blood in them than Elizabeth Warren does.
Yeah,
by happenstance.
Yeah. Any family that's been here for 6 generations more than likely has some Native.
If you're from Oklahoma, Nebraska, anywhere there was Native American population, somebody fucked somebody, and with half blood, and somebody made a baby in the 1700s, and you're a spawn of that.
And nearly every American black person as well.
Yes.
Because they're both sort of ostracized groups, and they were just fucking the hell out of each other. And because growing up in Alaska and knowing so many Native people, I can just tell a Native person, and I look at a lot of black people, and I'm like, I can see the Native features.
Well, assimilation in an environment where people are living together. I mean, people fuck.
Yeah.
And especially when people drink, they screw and they make babies. And it just, unless you're completely segregated, like white and black, perhaps in the South. But even in the South, it was like, look, Thomas Jefferson was having sex with all his black slaves. So there's all these black descendants of Thomas Jefferson.
Yeah.
It's not like, as racist as people were, they still wanted to have sex with the opposite race. They still want to have sex with
there are weird, waspy, sort of mutant-looking people, like Trump, for example. I know his family's they came over pretty late, but people of that ilk who look weird, they kept it white.
But then the Irish all have black, all have African, and I've told you a story. My mom took the 23andMe test, genetic test, and came back 1.4% Nigerian. Never a whiter woman walked this planet. But at some point, the world, people move, people are in boats, people are in ships, and they had sex with each other. And so there's nobody you can't be 100% pure. It's just not possible unless you live in some sort of clan up in the, people in like mountainous regions sometimes, or islands, like in England for a while, or places that are small islands might be much more pure.
Yeah.
But otherwise, people fuck. I mean, that's just
and you don't want to be pure. Like, I think Prince Harry's dad, what's that guy's name?
Charles, Prince Charles.
Yeah, he's pure, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, they look. The more unassimilated you are, the more ancestral you look, ancestral bred you look.
Yeah,
it's not a good thing. But having said that, Elizabeth Warren is probably the whitest person in all of America. And here's, I think, was her fundamental mistake. First of all, she was baited by Trump, and she took the bait. I mean, if you're dumb enough to be baited by Trump, then you don't deserve to be you don't deserve to be anything.
You're just giving him material.
Yes. He's taunting you into doing something that is against your better judgment, and you're giving into it, which means if you can't outsmart Trump, you're not capable of leadership.
Yeah, she and her advisors, she's obviously much smarter than Trump.
Very smart woman.
Personally.
Yes.
But she and her advisors are a serious error in judgment on this.
Yes. Well, unless it came back like 30, unless they thought that she had a grandparent or something, or even a great grandparent that people don't know about, she'd come back like 8%.
Well, I'm sure she took the test and opened the envelope and was like, "Shit."
Yes.
But then why release the results?
But she knew, because I heard she had done a genealogy chart before and could not find a single Native American in her genealogy. She did one of those genealogy things.
Yeah.
So they knew it was going back at least 200 years before she could trace her family line. I just don't. First of all, it's not important. It's not important. Do you know people from Alaska? Do you know people that lied on applications or anything about their Native American status?
No. Not that I know of. I never really asked anyone about it. In Alaska, and I think a lot of tribes don't have they don't have a minimum. Just if you identify as part of that tribe, they're like, yeah, we could use the numbers for our lobbying, and so I could go join many tribes, and as could you if we wanted to. But
there must be like scholarships or things like that that are reserved for.
Yeah, the benefits in Alaska, and I think most states is an eighth is the cutoff.
Okay,
so
I mean they're like the public school. When I went to UCLA, it was like I looked in that book of potential scholarships you can get, anywhere from like $50 to $5,000 or whatever. That the book of like scholarships I can apply for, and I remember like for what I was in, there was like 60. I got a list of 60, and 58 of them had some sort of demographic component that I didn't qualify for.
Yeah.
So there were like, I mean, unless I lied. So there were only like 2 that were for whitey, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it never occurred to me to lie, but I think that I don't know if anyone would ever check. I really think it's one of those honor system things that people probably adhere to.
Well, that was I think that was Warren's problem, right? She put down that she made it known that she was Cherokee. And then she let Harvard, when she was teaching law school there, promote her as the first woman of color at teaching at the law school. And that clearly, whether or not she got direct benefits out of that, she certainly got indirect benefits out of that.
She got something out of it, because why else would she do it? Even if it was personal, because there are a lot of posers.
Well, I think that at the Harvard law environment, it's a very progressive environment. They're representing victims of various oppression and victims groups.
Yeah, it certainly couldn't hurt whatsoever.
No, it definitely didn't hurt her. It wasn't like she got the job because of that, but she let herself be flaunted as, like Harvard flaunt her as the first woman of color hire in the law school, which was a big deal. And then she started doing the thing where she was like, then she was like 40 at this point, started then taking up Native American causes at 40, which she had never done before. And then she started doing all the things where, like, she's representing the underclass of Native Americans and stuff like that. And I think she just doubled down on her lie, which is where you always get caught. So it's like, once you do that, and now she had to fast forward 20 years, and she's doing a DNA test, which is going to show by all logical means that she's not anything close to Native American. And by the way, I think it came back as like, it was a South American, right? It was more... The DNA traced back to South, like Incan or whatever it was. It wasn't even North American, Native American.
Oh, okay.
So the Cherokees came out and said, like, you're not fucking Cherokee. Stop whooping.
Yeah, man, the Cherokees were like, fuck this.
I mean, I can see what you're saying, like honor system, and the tribes want more members, but they don't want phony baloney members who are clearly flaunting it just to get political advancement.
I mean, it definitely depends on the tribe, because so the tribes that have a lot of money. No, you got to produce some documentation.
Oh, you mean where you get to share the casino winnings?
Yes.
Yes.
And in fact, they'll just kick you out of the tribe even if you're full-blooded.
Yes.
Because,
they want more money.
But
I knew this.
I
knew this kid in high school. His last name was Alvarez. He was whiter than you are. You remember Barry Alvarez from the coach of Wisconsin? He was like that.
No, I do not.
Yes, he was a football coach at Wisconsin.
I remember the movie Blood In, Blood Out, where there was the half Mexican guy, but he looked like me.
Yes. Well, yes. The gang for years, the LA gang movies always had the Mexican guys who were all Caucasian guys, where they put like bandanas on their heads and put them in flannels. That was great. But Alvarez is like a name. Apparently, it comes from Spain. It's a Spanish name, like Spain in Europe proper. and it's actually like a aristocratic name lineage. So they're all white, blonde-haired people. And this kid was too. He was blonde hair, blue-eyed, white, and he had a Spanish surname. And he used it for all the UC systems to apply as a Hispanic American, which I guess technically he was, because you could trace your roots back to Spain. But he was. That's clearly what this was identified for. This was identified for Mexican and Central Americans. And he got into some of the UC schools and other things, got scholarships, whatever it was. And I never saw him again after that, but I always wonder. I mean, he kind of told everyone he was doing this. I always wonder if he felt bad about it. Probably. He wasn't he wasn't like a sinister dude, but he's just like, look, I mean, my name's Alvarez, and they're giving me this shit. I'm just gonna.
Yeah, I mean, technically,
take it. Oh, he wasn't oppressed. This dude fucking had everything. Had everything.
I've always wanted to see, because I hate the term African American. I won't say it. I just say black.
As do all black people, I believe.
Yeah,
except for activists,
well,
occasional activists.
No one's ever called me a European American, and you will get the heavy black lady occasionally. It's like, as an African American woman.
Yeah, activists say it because they
annoying.
came up with the name.
But I've always thought it would be hilarious to be a South African white guy and check the African American box.
African American,
because technically you're correct, right?
Yes.
Dave Matthews is now getting
African American
scholarship.
Well, I think it's supposed to denote the fact that you came over as a slave, right?
Yeah,
that's what it's supposed to denote. But you're right. But I don't like when they have those forms. If you ever apply for a job or anything, it asks you like what your race is. You have to fill out what your race is. You can deny it if you don't want to do it, but it always asks. And since everyone is technically multiracial, that number is like rising dramatically.
Yeah,
it's like 30% of people now put multiracial down. So the stat doesn't mean anything anymore. And in 100 years, it'll probably be 70% who are multiracial.
Well, it's totally politicized, and it's nonsensical, because to state the obvious, not trying to sound like a freshman in high school, but there is no race is a construct. There is really no race like you're saying. No one's a pure race.
And so this thing has come up at Harvard in particular with the Asian American lawsuit, where the Asian Americans are suing Harvard because Harvard is this is a weird thing. So Harvard says like you're allowed to the Supreme Court has ruled that you're allowed to take race into account in college admissions, but it has to be in this very sort of obtuse way. It can't be like a quota system. You can't say we're going to take 20% Asians, 30% white, 10% black, 50%. You can't do that. But you're allowed to take race as a factor. But I always wonder, like, what is the factor? What does that mean? Like, how does race a factor other than through like, okay, we need some blacks, we need some Hispanics, we need some Asians.
Well, apparently in the case of this WASPy institution, it's Harvard. They don't want the campus too dark. I believe they don't want it to be all Asians, because you go and walk around like where I went to school at University of Washington or UCLA.
In Berkeley, it's like 60%.
It's all Asian. And,
yes.
And by the way, that's fine. Like I don't care.
Well, it should. It's weird because you would say like, okay, it's really. I mean, if it was all white, you'd be like, oh Jesus, this place is fucking racist. It's all white. It's horrible, as it was for most of its history.
Yeah.
But if it's all Asian, it's like, okay, you have to admit that it's not like everyone's pro-Asian and hates everybody else. It's because these kids all fucking work their asses off and score well on tests, and they sort of deserve to be here. If you remember that lawsuit, the Peter Thiel company where he's stealing everyone's data across the country for his evil empire, he got sued because his engineering staff was only 50% Asian, and they determined that like 85% of the qualified applicants were Asian, and it was only 50% hires. I mean, it's just, what are you going to do? I mean, if that's why race, like you said, it's you have to look at it like a social construct, because how are you going to deny, like, say, oh, we have too many Asians, and therefore we're not going to let you into school, even though you worked your fucking ass off, you did everything we asked you to do, but you got to your last name's Wong, and therefore you can't come to school here. Yeah,
I think at this point, I mean, I still believe some form of affirmative action, excuse me, Jesus Christ, I'm still getting over this cold, is necessary in some instances, but no one in academia is racist for the most part. I'm sure there are a few, but why don't we just do away with it completely?
Well, I mean, wouldn't it make more sense to do a demographic affirmative action where like people from shitty neighborhoods get a bonus, or people that went to like crappy, public schools get a bonus over like just another prep school kid? I mean,
I just think it gets politicized because so now you're getting into like, well, we all know what Asian means. I mean,
Yes.
come on, we all know what that means.
Just so you know, because I didn't really think about it, it also includes Indians now.
Yeah,
So
South Asians. But when I was I had to check a box for something in college. I can't remember. It wasn't for the application, or maybe it was.
Was it your AIDS test?
Yeah, I checked positive.
You had to use a condom. You had to use a condom. Otherwise you get arrested.
One pill a day. It's no big deal. And it said so there were a few categories. Black, Asian, and then it said white, and there were parentheses, and then it said like
non-Hispanic,
non-Hispanic, Middle Eastern.
Yeah.
And I believe it even said like South Asian or something. Like it was like it just lumped
like Kazakhstani or something like that.
Yeah, because
like Russian.
Yeah, so Middle Eastern. I mean, you look at an Arab guy.
Yes,
that's not the same as an Irish guy.
No,
in appearance.
No.
So it's like clearly for some reason, and Jews obviously there's Ashkenazi Jews and different kind of. I'm saying that part of the world is a sort of
Mixed.
a different pigment than Northern Europe.
Very much so. Well, the Caucasians came from the Caucasus Mountains, which were in Russia. So it was a real blend of people. I mean, it was like they were white versus black Africans. They were clearly not black Africans.
Yeah.
But they were not like pale Nordic motherfuckers. That came later.
So how do you determine a race? I mean, even if the Black Irish, because the Moors went around fucking everyone or raping, I should say.
Yes, they did. The Irish loved it. I finally got big dick.
Like, I just don't see how you even like.
I would go.
I just honestly think that we should do away with it.
Like, I would give bonus points to a kid who was number one in his class in a South Central high school. Like a kid who was from a shitty area. Regardless of race. Obviously, they're mostly going to be black or Hispanic.
Yeah. I
would clearly give an advantage. I'd say okay, look, this kid grew up in a shitty fucking environment, gang infested, drug infested, failing school, and he still lifted himself up. I would give huge props to that kid, but I wouldn't take a black kid from Ladera Heights here in LA, which is known as the Black Beverly Hills, which is where all the professional upscale African Americans or blacks live.
I went to Coolio's house there.
Yes. It's called the Black Beverly Hills. It's the houses start at 1.4 million, and it's a very posh area. You can't compare those two things. I mean, it's a totally different environment. So yeah, using race is foolish. But places like Harvard, they want to see a mix of color. They consider a mix of color to be diversity.
Yeah,
and that's where I think they make a mistake. Although I will say this: if the Asians win the lawsuit, it's going to be all Asian. The school's going to be all Asian. So
well, then I would just tell if I had a kid, I'd just be like, well, call yourself a fucking Asian. I'll take a DNA test. I guarantee you, there's something in there.
Have you seen that guy who's Indian? He's Indian, but he's very dark skinned Indian, black. His skin is it looks like Draymond Green black, and but he's East Indian. And he applied to medical school as African American and got in on the scholarships.
Oh, I remember that. Right?
Yeah, he wrote a book. He does all this stuff, and it's you kind of forgive. He's supposed to forgive him now because he exposed everything, but he just said, look, they actually saw him in interviews. He sent a picture, and they're like, oh, black dude, and they
yeah, that guy's a fucking douchebag.
He is a total douchebag, but it's or Alvarez, the story I told from high school, oh, Alvarez, Mexican, okay, you get the stuff. It's so fucking stupid, and it's so unfair to fucking Wong and Shen and everybody else.
But all right, so that's identifying probably falsely for a benefit. But when you look at Native American groups outside of Harvard, it's usually not that cool to be an Indian.
No.
No. You're probably poor and downtrodden.
You mean a real Native American?
Yeah, a real.
Yes.
Not an East Indian, but because. When I was
please, Max, try to be politically correct if you can.
No, it's hard to distinguish.
Well, they don't. I don't think they like to be called Native American, but
you'd get 100 different answers if you asked any of them. But I remember when I was growing up in Alaska,
indigenous persons.
One of my and they don't like that. One of my friends' dads. So this guy was half Eskimo and half white, but his dad was a sort of a super Jewish guy from New York City.
Yeah.
Who just fucked an Eskimo woman. And he was
that sounds awesome, by the way. Except for the rubbing nose. You have to rub. I don't like rubbing noses.
She was pretty hot. His kids turned out to be insane. One was in jail. But you know, he was always lecturing us, and so we'd be listening to gangster rap, and he'd be like, guys, you know, I can't do the Jewish accent, but he'd be like, I don't understand why you guys want to bring in this ghetto shit when we don't have any ghettos here. Like, we just, if you look out the window, there's mountains, and you guys don't really have a lot to worry about. I mean, there are some, you know, tough kids around, but he didn't understand why we would want to, I wouldn't say identify, but sort of, you know, subject ourselves to something that we didn't necessarily have to worry about, to bring in an influence that wasn't
I'm with him.
necessary.
Well, I generally don't like white suburban kids who listen to rap music, or those kids at the Brentwood school singing, dropping N-bombs with songs, because they're like, the influence of hip-hop culture is odd because it has made its money off white kids who have no identification whatsoever with the origins of the music. So I don't mind. I appreciate like black R&B music. I have no association with it necessarily, but I probably wouldn't make it my lifestyle. I
think he made a notice that maybe a few of us were sagging.
Yes,
doing a little sagging, the dirty sag.
Can we admit that Elizabeth Warren is now out for 2020? It's not just that.
Why is she out? This happened 30 years ago. Yeah, it's fucked up.
Well, because she just did if she hadn't done the DNA test now and she just said, fuck you, Trump, I don't need to.
But Trump paid off like a bunch of porn stars.
Yeah, but that's,
I mean, if we're even talking like professional,
but here's the thing,
compared to a Republican candidate,
here's the problem. Here's the problem. I think for any Democratic candidate, like they're talking about, like, I don't know, Eric Garcetti from LA or something like that. Like, you're not going to beat. I mean, she is a woman. I'll give her that. So she's a woman. That's a big up for her at the party.
Give her that.
Well, I mean, as a term for a demographic, I think it's going to be a black American who gets the nod from the Democratic side. They're just not going to go with Bernie Sanders. They're not going to go with old white person. I just don't think they're going with old white person.
I hope they go with Biden, because Biden will fucking smack down Trump.
Probably, but I don't think the base is going to go for old white person. I just don't. There's just too much energy against old white person. Maybe female, maybe, but not old white guy. I just don't see it happening. So
I don't want another black guy, because the first black guy pissed enough people off that we got this now. So what happens if a black guy wins? We're gonna get fucking.
It's not gonna be a
Attila
black guy.
the Hun in the next.
It's not gonna be a black guy. So no DNA, no more DNA tests. She should start wearing an Indian headdress and just go full Cherokee. Just like carry a quill of arrows on her back.
Start
and
attending Redskins games.
Matt, you are a big fan of gay bottoms. I believe that's your search term on Tinder. Stephen Elliott, who runs the website, you're bookmarked, rumpus.com.
I don't know what it is, but I don't want to know. I don't want to check.
A rumpus technically is not a gay term specifically. Rumpus is like, you remember Where the Wild Things Are? When Max in Where the Wild Things Are, the kid ran away and played with the wild things in the story, in the book.
It was read to me, but I retained no.
The rumpus is just like a wild bacchanalia, like, going crazy kind of party.
It's like a fracas.
Yeah, it doesn't imply necessarily lots of gay sex. However,
no, but yeah.
If you're a sub bottom and you're running a website called Rumpus, it probably has a lot of gay.
I've been to a gay bar called the Rumpus Room, and I don't remember what city. Have you been? Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I don't. I don't really know. You know how I know like old movies and stuff? You know gay bars. I'm old enough to remember Rumpus rooms were like the room in the house. They call it like bonus room now, like in LA. Like if you look for houses, a bonus room. It was like usually a downstairs basement. It was called the Rumpus Room. It was basically where you'd send the kids to just fucking make a mess. Was the Rumpus Room.
Bonus room. Oh, yeah. So the cool parents in quotes are like, you can draw on the walls in here.
Yes,
like,
yes.
So you hate your life. Great.
It was more like, I would say more like Midwestern basement where you'd send the kids to just fucking go down to the basement, just shut the fuck up.
Do they just start brawling and humping each other? I don't know what goes on in there.
There was something. I think it was just like the kids. It was like the kids' room where you could just fuck around and like fucking play tackle football and stuff on the ground, and like the parents didn't have to hear you while they're upstairs drinking.
That's fine.
Yeah. But I think for Stephen Elliott, the rumpus means something different. Just the fact the word rump is in there makes me a little...
He's like on the record, he's like a dungeon torture master
He's
guy.
a
BDSM guy.
Well, so he's like a sub-bottom... I think he's not transgender, but I think he's transvestite.
Why do they have to rub it in our face? Like, dude, I don't care if you're gay.
No.
Why do I have to know that he's a bottom?
Well, I think
how
it's part of his literature. So he writes.
But
He's been in this guy's been in L.A. because he fits in L.A. very well, and they've tried to turn some of his books into movies. He's like one of those avant-garde, like gay dudes, not a decent writer who has like wild stories and stuff like that. And they love turning that. It's like he's like the male Diablo Cody, right? He's got all these wild like sexual tales and stuff like that from L.A. and New York. So sort of a less than zero type.
Yeah, who is the? Now I'm spacing on the guy's name. Burroughs. He's like the William S. Burroughs.
Yeah, with a lot more pegging.
And maybe not as much talent. I mean, I've never read any.
Well,
of
I
his
mean, he is so very much in the now. I would say for like what Hollywood likes. So he's a legitimately like commercial artist. I would say in terms of the material he writes. I mean, for indie gay films. And
Which I would like to say.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm like not homophobic. I don't need to read this shit. Like I'm not writing a short story like I jerked off on a chick in the shower. It's like, hey guy, maybe keep that to yourself. Yes. Like, how come it's different if you're a flaming homosexual?
Well, so think about if Hunter S. Thompson was a sub bottom, and like he just took drugs and got into like weird sorts of shit and wrote about it. That's sort of like what is cool now. Look at all all these movies that are coming out for Oscar now. There's like they all have gay themes. It's all about weird gay love, early gay sex, and weird love and stuff like that. And it's just like
man boy.
Well, if you got a third of Hollywood executives are gay males, you're gonna want people are gonna want to make movies that talk to their own kind of like young male experience. I guess.
Yeah.
It doesn't bother me that it goes on, but he was listed last year on that shitty media men Google list. That was women in media, New York media published this anonymous list where women could go on this Google Doc basically and add entries of naming names of guys who sexually harassed or sexually assaulted them or were just creepy, because that's a crime.
Well, he seems to fall into the creepy category.
Well, no, but yes, he is definitely creepy. But he was accused of sexual assault by somebody anonymously on this list.
So
of actual rape. I mean, he was accused of.
But isn't he just a gay guy?
Well, that was what he said. Like, it's kind of weird. First of all, he denies any he doesn't even know who made the accusation. So this list came out. It was anonymous. It got published through one of these feminist blogs, published it. I forget what it was. And then like everyone wanted to know who, there was a lot of legal implications of having this list defaming people essentially. And so they got to the bottom of who published it. It was this media person, Moira Donegan, who published it, although she didn't write the entries herself, and she refuses to give the names of who did, even if she knows who did it. It was a Google Doc.
Yeah.
So anyone with access could put it up there. So Stephen Elliott's the first guy off this list who's actually suing Moira Donegan, since there's no other named parties, and Jane Doe's 1 through 50 or whoever on the list, and saying, fuck, I didn't rape any. First of all, I'm a gay sub-bottom. I don't rape women. I don't assault women. Even if I was like, assaultive, it would be with a dude pegging my ass.
And he's most likely innocent because you would never sue if you did something like that.
You would never sue
because
all the depositions come out. Now, here's the problem. So if you read that article, I think it was one of the New York magazines wrote about it. New York Times, I think it was. It was really weird because he actually went to other people on the list and talked to them, and they all told him, don't speak up. Like, dudes on the list who were like progressives. He's a very liberal progressive guy, obviously, as a gay sub-bottom. I mean, he's an outspoken progressive advocate on almost on every cause. But other progressives on that list, it wasn't like a list of like white Republicans. It was guys in media. So a lot of them were very liberal guys, progressive guys. And they all told him not to speak up. And they said that they were innocent, but they didn't want to. They felt like they actually said, take one for the team to him.
That sounds not innocent to me.
Well, no, what they're saying is like, we don't want to speak up against the feminist cause, about the Me Too cause, because we're support it. Therefore, just let it slide.
So they're being intimidated. They don't want to draw too much attention to the fact that they're on this list.
Well, or the fact that they don't want to pick that fight, because then they're saying like, they basically saying we need to support there is all this harassment, sexual assault. We need to support the cause, and therefore don't speak, even though your name's on it, don't speak up against it as if it's a bunch of bullshit.
And so the other side is saying that in this lawsuit, when you depose and do discovery and all that, that they shouldn't be able to name the people who are the accusers. Fucking hell.
Well, Moira Donegan will be on the hook
because that would discourage people from coming forward.
Yes, that
in the future,
and also she may not know because it was a Google Doc. She may not actually know. I mean, sure, there must be records somewhere of who what IP accounts uploaded to it. Yeah. But I don't know if that's through Google or through Moira who published it. I don't know who actually has that information.
Is she the one? So when you say public, like
she's the one who
did she leak it?
Yes, she's the one who leaked it to the press, basically.
Okay.
Its existence, and I think she actually had it on her computer. So it's a Google Doc, but I think she actually released the doc. It's all a hard copy is available online of this document. There's like 70 names on it. But this dude is like, I think it's amazing that a guy is standing up and saying, I'm going to sue your fucking ass because I don't care that especially as a progressive gay man, I don't care that, your cause is just. This is bullshit. You can't just anonymously accuse me of rape without any, corroborative information or any information whatsoever and shame me. And apparently this guy's spent the last year like in his basement doing drugs and almost trying to kill himself because he's been ostracized from, every group he was in because he was named as a rapist, which is not a great thing to be named. Not a great thing to be named.
No, I wonder if Hollywood is especially sensitive to this idea of lists, because of the McCarthy era, and
they don't seem to be because there's a lot of lists going. A lot of lists going around.
Well, I got into it with this hardcore lesbian chick, really unattractive, by the way, over something I wrote. It was nothing personal. I don't even believe it was that offensive, but I started arguing with her. And she said, well, you're on my list. And I said, well, no one gives a shit about your list. Yeah. But every time now I don't get a job, I'm like,
I'm on a list.
I wonder if I am on that list.
Yes. Well, I mean, the release of this list, the Shitty Media Men's list, especially...
Are you on that list?
I'm not.
I'm not on the list, right?
No.
Okay, good.
It was more... It wasn't... I mean, Steve Elliott's not like a bigwig. He's not like Harvey Weinstein or something like that. He runs a website. He's a writer. There's probably 3 or 4 employees. He's not a big deal. It was like agents and managers and guys, a lot of blog people, a lot of people in digital media, digital publishing. Someone at BuzzFeed, someone else at like another online media outlet. But people that are known in New York in those circles.
Yeah. Because
they all work within a block of each other.
Was your old boss on that list?
I have many old bosses who deserve to be on the list, but they're not. They're not on the list. It wasn't like a Les Moonves list. It was just like a way down list. Like that got to an actual writer, like just a guy like this Elliot, who's a writer. Here's the problem with Elliot. While I do admire the fact that he's standing up and suing, because the only way to make this shit stop, the false allegations, is to sue. Yeah. That's the only recourse you have, is to sue for defamation. And finally, somebody's actually doing it. There's a lot of innocent guys on that list. I'm sure there's probably a lot of guilty guys on that list. I'm sure they're all creepy. But creepy is not a crime, and you shouldn't be defamed for being creepy. I mean, someone could say he's creepy, but you shouldn't be on a secret list.
Yeah, and if it's a Google Doc, I mean, do they even explain the criteria?
There was a field to put in, like, why you said he did this or so, like what he actually did. But the problem with Elliot is because he is a gay sub-bottom and he runs Rumpus, he, around the office, of course, talks about sex all the time and talks about other shit all the time. I mean, he's a very sexual creature, let's say. So he makes people very uncomfortable a lot with his probably, I don't want to say persona, his real person. That's who he is. He's an outspoken gay sub-tranny bottom or whatever. So, of course, when you're around him or you work with him, he's a weird dude. So a lot of people are coming out and saying, like, no, look, he is this creepy guy. He did this or he did that. To me, nothing assaultive, but like creepy shit, like sort of weird personality shit. So that's going to come out. That's going to come out, of course. And then
I'm sure he is. Fucking hell. I'm sure he's creepy as fuck. But just because you've deemed yourself like the authority on BDSM pegging, yes, that doesn't mean, over bagels that you just get to wax on and off about the intimate details of lubing up and like it's
no. But if you work for Rumpus, let's say, and that's the theme of the site, like it's like when people claim they were like sexually harassed on porn sets, like, oh, come on, like it's like,
yeah, I agree.
It's like your job is to be like, even when remember that BDSM actress claimed she was raped during a scene,
yeah,
where the scene was a rape scene.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, let's say you're prone to being raped when you're filming rape scenes. So if you work for
a safe word is like an elaborate Morse code.
Yes.
Like, well,
safe word. Your safe word is you should have said that a year ago before you signed up for this shit. So, but he's not. I wish like a more say masculine, typical male who was on this list, who has a good reputation, would stand up and start suing. And we talked about this before. We were taping today about that kid in I think it was Ohio high school kid, and the 3 girls conspired to like charge him with make up sexual assault cases for this high school kid. Yeah. And they it was all completely made up. They recanted everything. They just didn't like this guy at high school, or they were jealous of him, so they made up sexual assault stories. And he was like handcuffed in class and taken out and mocked as a sex offender. Now, of course, he's suing.
Me, man.
Oh, that's why it's weird, because there's that like him too or whatever hashtag where like parents are like talking about how they're scared for their sons, like in high school or college these days, for false rape accusations. Everybody mocks them as like, oh, you're just like, oh yes, like men are really the victims here in these sexual assault stories. Well, no, of course there's 9 female victims for every 1 male victim of a false rape allegation, but that doesn't make it any better or diminish the horror of being falsely accused of rape.
Yeah, well, I think we talked about it last week, but the FBI, who I'm coming to trust more and more. They said it was 8%, right? It was 8%,
and I imagine among high school cliques of high school girls, it's probably much higher.
Where did I don't know if this type of thing has always gone on and we just didn't know about it, but the fact that 3 girls, high school girls, would go along with this in this insidious plot, and nearly get away with it, by the way. I don't even know how they got found out, but that they would conspire that way, which is a very teenage girl thing to do.
Yeah, they've done stuff where they've actually like named teachers before. There was a teacher who just sued who was like falsely accused. Now, by the way, teachers are fucking fondling the kids, obviously, but there was a girls who made up a story about a teacher she didn't like. That's been going on forever, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I
heard about it when I was in high school. Like, some teacher at some school was busted. Now, by the way, they probably were all fucking teenage girls, so
dude,
hard to tell.
A couple of my really good friends ended up being teachers, and so they have a couple just shithead kids.
Yes.
And when we were in school together, we were fucking shitheads. We were fucking assholes. We would fuck with the teacher, obstruct everything possible for him to not get a sentence out. But he has this fucking bastard-ass kid, and it's 5th, 6th grade, something like that.
Jesus.
And I go, and the kid said that he hit him.
Yeah.
And he didn't. And so he's trying to explain this to the parents, and he had to go through this whole thing with the principal, et cetera. I go, so what if he said Mr. X touched my penis? What if he decided to do that? He's like, I'd probably be fucked.
Yeah. Oh, you would.
And I don't know. I just think that maybe kids are learning this from the news, and this is a way to fuck someone. Dr. Luke, for example,
with Kesha to get out of a contract.
With Kesha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To me it's a pendulum swing. So like 50 years ago, basically a girl could be raped. No, especially if she was like a trashy girl or from the wrong side of the tracks, or she was like slutty, had a reputation. She could be raped and like no one would believe her, or they didn't care, right? It was like, 17-year-old girl who was like party girl from the wrong side of the tracks, who had slept around, had a reputation in high school. Some, jock rapes her. No consequences, right, basically?
As is demonstrated in many films.
Yes. But I actually believe, that was before my time, but I actually believe that happened, right?
Yes.
And especially if the girl had no means, doesn't have financial means, or wasn't from a well-off family or something like that, she was kind of fucked.
Yeah.
Now, 50 years later, the pendulum swung the other way, where it is this guilty till proven innocent, where women can use sexual assault charge as a I hate the word weaponized, but as a weapon. Because think about it, if there's never witnesses, there's never any witnesses to these crimes. So, and as we talked about last week, you can't falsely accuse someone of like fucking, counterfeiting money or something like that, or being a drug pusher like that. It's obvious that you're not. But sexual assault, when you're in the same room with someone alone, there's no way to prove it happened or it didn't happen, right? Especially if you actually had like in the case of Asia Argento, have had consensual sex with the same person you're now accusing of sexual assault.
Right.
There's no way to prove you didn't even have sex because you were admitting to
sex.
sex.
Which has to be factored in, by the way.
Yes.
Like the argument that that's irrelevant is completely dubious.
But the fact that so many women's groups, mostly women's groups, and the beta males behind them in Hollywood are saying believe her, that it's like it has to be a guilty till proven innocent case. That's so fucking scary. If I was a teen girl, I'd be like, fuck, that's some power right there. If I don't like somebody, I can eliminate. Now you got to be a devious chick to do that, but there's devious guys, there's devious girls. That's going to be your weapon of choice.
Yeah, because like as I was saying, like we were obnoxious kids, but it would have crossed a serious line to say that someone hit us when they didn't.
Yes.
That would be not cool at all. But that has now happened. I mean, it happened to my friend. He's one of my best friends.
It is scary. I think it is scary for guys. Now, of course, there are still men that are assaulting women, and they should be fucking shot or whatever. But there's also people now, especially on college campuses, it's going down to high school level now, that are being falsely accused. And so I think, like Stephen Elliott showing, well, he's not the right guy. Your only recourse, the criminal justice system being politicized is gearing heavily towards women, the accuser now. That's obvious. Most parts of the country, at least. Probably not in certain parts of like Alabama. You're probably okay to do your rapes. Probably okay with your rapes.
Roy
there.
Moore?
Yeah, you're probably okay with your underage rapes there. But if you're if you're anywhere near a city, near a city limit, and you're accused of a sex crime, you're guilty until proven innocent. Yeah. And even though the criminal justice system may eventually acquit you, you've lost your job, you've lost your reputation. If you're the guy like with Mattress Girl at Columbia, you've been ostracized on campus, people putting up posters of your face on the wall, or this kid at school being taken out in shackles with girls screaming rapist at him and stuff like that. And you can't go back to that. You can never go back to that.
No, we got to hold people accountable. I mean, Mattress Girl, it came out that she was lying, and everyone just dropped the fucking thing.
Yes.
When she was being followed by 10 cameras before, and now it's...
Yeah.
Now it's not, hey, why did you lie? Yes. But now it's just, that just never happened.
And he sued Columbia and got like several $1 million from Columbia University like 3 years later. But that's, but you have to sue. You got to sue. I like what Stephen Elliott's doing. You got to sue because at least people who are lying, and the idea that it's going to squelch real cases, I don't believe is true at all. Because you're not going to win the civil case unless it shows that you were clearly lying. No. You got to sue. And so when you sue these girls' parents for $500,000 and say like, yeah, your girl's falsely accused someone of rape and destroyed his life. Now you have to pay $500,000.
But
it's sell your house.
It's still much easier to make a false accusation. Like when you say sue, because I've kind of dealt with this. Like,
of course.
No, in one time, I don't want to. A crazy woman accused me of being inappropriate. I wasn't an assault.
I like the word inappropriate, by the way.
It's not
like
easy.
You wore the wrong color, like your shoes and belt didn't match at a formal event.
She said I was threatening. I have no idea what that means. Maybe I am threatening to her just by walking around. It's not my fucking problem. But it's not that easy to sue. I mean, you have to have some means. You're going out of pocket unless you have some pro bono thing.
Well, they're going to the plaintiff's attorney will take on your Larry H. Parkers of the world, your ambulance chasers. If there's money to be made, they'll take it on for contingency.
Yeah, but if you're just an average guy that gets accused of something, it's not as easy as simply suing. I mean,
there has to be a larger entity involved because most of the families don't have a lot of money, so they all sue the schools who have a lot of money, and they always seem to win these cases. I mean, there's always a settlement. It's always a settlement, but it's large amounts of money. These schools are paying out large amounts of money for these false rape. It's always 2 or 3 years later. But it's a large amount.
Well, it's probably. I mean,
Michigan State's paying
a lot of it goes back to the attorneys. Though.
Michigan State's paying like $250 million.
I don't think anyone's celebrating after they win these things.
Well, no, but I think they're getting money out of it, and it's sort of the institutions don't seem to care. But at some point, if they keep getting sued, they will start to care. Matt, you're a huge fan of Pete Davidson. We established that last week.
I never want to criticize comedians or anything. But.
Well, I don't think you need to criticize his comedy. You can criticize his personal life, perhaps. I did not see the breakup coming with Ariana Grande after the 17 tattoos. I think 4 weeks into the relationship, if you get engaged like after 4 weeks and then after 6 weeks you've covered your body in the tattoos of the names of your girlfriend,
it's like a red flag for the woman.
It's a red flag for the woman and for some kind of psychiatric intervention. I don't know who I always feel like, okay, people get their kids' names tattooed on their bodies maybe. I saw some celebrity who just got their kids' names. Okay, your kids will always be your kids.
Right.
Even if they're shitty kids, like, okay, put your kids' names on a tattoo on your leg or whatever the fuck you want. But a boyfriend, after like a few weeks, tattooing like your fingers with his names and stuff like that is like, or a girlfriend, it's just the dumbest fucking idea, as evidenced in the history of every time anyone's ever done it. And it's never ever worked out, and they have to laser the shit
It
off.
might be one of the, and not that he didn't have the opportunity, but for whatever reason, I feel like it might be one of the first times he ever got laid.
Oh,
and,
interesting.
And just went really hard for it, because I was thinking, like, to me, I always think, like, you know, motivation, kind of possible conspiracy, but I'm like, well, what's in it for her?
Yes.
Nothing.
No.
So I think they just had they fucked for a while.
Well,
And,
do you remember, was it last week or 2 weeks ago, we were talking about how he used to apologize to her after sex for him being so measly and her being so amazing?
I hate him.
Yeah, and I think at that time we all decided that it was not going to last more than a couple of weeks. And, like, that's just no way. That's no way to work a relationship with a hot chick.
By the way, horrible, I agree, and horrible tragedy, you know, for your dad to be killed in 9/11. Is that more traumatizing than your dad being killed while sawing logs? Like, is that?
Interesting question. Well, the song,
like,
yes.
I don't mean sawing. I mean in a lumberjack accident. Like, is that worse?
I would think if you grew up in New York, around after 9/11 as a kid, and I actually know some people, at least one family fairly well, where the dad was lost in 9/11. You're part of like a group. Now you're part of a group, right? People that lost someone. So there's a whole, and when you're like 4 years old or 5 years old, it becomes a big part of your life, I think, because of all the attention to it.
So that could make it worse, or it could make it better because you have a support group.
I think both. I think it's both. I think it makes it like it becomes a bigger part of your life
Because you're not compounding it in this sort of weird patriotic, symbolism of freedom and all.
Yeah,
this
if your
fucking
dad
bullshit.
died like in a logging accident, you'd be like, I think you'd probably forget about him pretty quickly. Not, if you're 4 or 5, because people wouldn't be going like, man, your dad was a logger, like no one ever logged before. He was the Loggers Association is not making you go to award ceremonies or visit like memorials for loggers or stuff like that.
Yeah,
there's no when they talk about your bio, it doesn't include your bio. Your dad was killed in a logging accident.
But why should it? By the way, I mean, like
9/11 was just a cultural.
9/11 was a big,
cultural thing.
I'm gonna go on record. Big deal.
Yes.
We're still talking about it. Never made it a holiday. We could use a holiday.
It's an unofficial holiday.
Well,
you have to do memorial every 9/11. They do a thing, and it goes. And I guess someday that will stop. But it's like like sort of D-Day, probably for the first 20 years after World War II. Or
right.
The they memorialize the days that the Germans or Japanese surrender was a big celebration end of whatever they call that day. Probably for many years after World War II, because all the veterans were there, and then now nobody really celebrates it anymore.
My friend Travis Simmons, really funny comedian. It's a joke, but it's true. He has a FDNY sticker on his truck because he doesn't want to get pulled over because he drives around smoking weed all the time.
Yes.
I don't know if I respect that or not. I think it's kind of funny. I don't know. No one's ever talking about the fucking Oklahoma City. It's all I ever hear about is 9/11 and Sandy Hook, and like I'm not trying to minimize having lost
it's a huge media phenomenon and a cultural phenomenon, and everyone still references it. Like, if the entire nation still on the date anniversary of your father's death every year still honors it with memorials and speeches and stuff, it's still going to be a thing. I agree that it's the way your dad dies tragically should not really affect how he's honored necessarily, unless he died like doing something idiotic. But if your dad was like, and by the way, his dad was a firefighter, right? So he was a firefighter, I believe.
I think so.
Yeah, so he wasn't just like he wasn't working at the bank. I mean, not that that's any worse, but he was actually trying to help people that day. So someone heroic.
I would not like to have a friend whose father perished in 9/11 because I would feel bad espousing my theories to him about 9/11.
Yes.
And you probably, because at that point, you don't want to think about 9/11.
No.
You're not doing any reading up on possible scenarios that may have may or may not have played a factor.
No, you're not. Your dad died that day.
Yeah.
So and Pete Davidson also has some illness. He has a various number of illnesses. He has, he has Crohn's disease. So which isn't like a killer, and not a lot of people, but a number of people have it. But it's not a great thing to have.
It means you shit your pants, right?
It's a GI tract problem. It probably explains why he's so slender.
It's an
immune deficiency thing.
Right.
But it probably explains why he's so slender and why he's so gaunt at times.
Yeah.
It's because it's just like, it's sort of, it just doesn't it can't eat a lot of food.
Right.
Or he can't eat fun food for sure. So you're not a foodie if you have Crohn's disease. And so he is gaunt, and he has the what they call the butthole eyes and stuff like that. But then he's also pierced himself all over, tattooed himself with his girlfriend's names, and done other shit.
Yeah, he went on Weekend Update, because I still watch SNL. I don't know who else does, but because I DVR'd it. But he does this Weekend Update segment, and it's all about how he's fucking Ariana Grande. And so the people at SNL are now like this weird little coven of like, oh my God, a celebrity.
Yeah.
Now we have to he has to talk about this. It's like, what are you, a fucking slut at One Oak? Like, yeah, he's fucking a celebrity. Who gives a shit? Yeah. So he has to do a segment about it. He's got the knuckle tats. He's wearing a pink sweater. He's this close away from getting a face tattoo. The dyed hair. I'm like, this guy looks like a dork.
Yes.
He looks, I don't know what version of cool this is, meaning like who. Okay, so Lorne Michaels is what, 90 years old?
Yes.
So he's like,
approximately 90.
This guy's cool.
Yeah.
He's like the cool guy. I don't know of any other person outside of him who's like, this guy's cool. To me, he looks like he's having a crisis.
He's not really countercultural. He's
like assimilated into shitty chick Instagram culture.
Yes. I mean, he just looks, I think it's just the appearance of being a hipster. But he really is just a celebrity Instagram social media phenomenon. And like you said, I think you mentioned, he can't do a lot of sketch comedy because he's made himself look so much like a cartoon.
Yeah, he was on SNL playing some politician, and he turned around, and he has like a big tat under his ear.
Yeah.
Like a neck tat. And it's like, obviously there's ways to cover that up if you're on a movie, but... Like, at what point? So if he just gets an ice cream cone tattooed on his fucking face, is he still on the show? We're just supposed to ignore that?
Well, you would think as a sketch comedian, as someone who impersonates people, you would not want to have overtly obvious, superficial, weird things about you that made everyone say that's Pete Davidson. No matter what.
Exactly.
Like, you can only play, at that point, you can only play Pete Davidson. You can play, like, Justin Bieber, maybe. Or you can play, like, a couple other hipsters that look like you. But there's really, you can't play, they do what? Political stuff. Who are you going to play in the cabinet, in the Trump cabinet? Who you play the Trump cabinet? Or what senator are you going to play looking like that? I mean, those guys like when Belushi and Dan Aykroyd and Bill Murray, they'd play guys. They didn't really look like them, but they were very plain looking guys.
Yeah. So
they could put on a wig or something like that and kind of pull it off. The whole idea of sketch is you can play anybody. So you have a very blank vanilla look to you. But he is just like, he is Pete Davidson now.
Yeah. And he's 30 or
I don't think he's even 30 yet.
There.
Yeah.
Why are you bleaching your hair? I mean, what? He's not 17 years old, like, and you're not a rock star. Like, being on SNL is cool. It's a cool gig, and like, I get it, but like, you're not David fucking Bowie all of a sudden.
No, you don't see a lot of stand-up guys going out there with their look.
No,
like trying to be really extreme in their look. It just doesn't seem to stand-up are the most bland-looking people in the world because you're not supposed to have an outrageous-looking appearance unless you're fucking like Carrot Top, right? Unless you're doing a shtick.
Yeah, unless that's your thing.
But what's his thing going to be looking like that? Like,
I think his thing is I'm a crazy guy.
Yes.
Because he in that same monologue he talked about how he's crazy, which is another one of his many ailments. So now he's
bipolar too,
physically and mentally ill.
Yes.
So he's just like a really ill person
who just got dumped by a celebrity girlfriend. I told you this offline. I think I feel bad making fun of him because I just see some sort of tragic end for him very soon. Because I think he's one of those guys you think is playing the role of like sort of disturbed guy, but I think he is actually disturbed, and I think he's going to take like a breakup really hard, and you're going to find him like Anthony Bourdain type thing,
Right. But if you're disturbed, So someone should at the show step in
Yes.
if this is indeed the case. If you're disturbed, you can't make your thing being disturbed.
No.
Like Bobcat Goldthwait,
Yes.
his thing was that he was disturbed,
Yes.
but he's not.
No.
He's totally sane.
He's actually a really good director, by the way.
You shouldn't. It's like, it's like being the party guy, and everyone you're known for drinking a lot.
Well, the only people I would say the only people I would say fall in that category that we've seen before are the fat guys in SNL, who are actually obese drug addicts, who are like just gluttonous, suicidal fools. It's always been that way. Belushi and Farley and everybody else, who are all guys who died very young because they just ate too much and did too many drugs, and they just kind of watched. Now you just wait for the fat guy to die, because some shit is up. So I mean that's the thing. But like as you said, you need a fat guy in the show. You don't need Pete Davidson. You don't need Pete Davidson hipster. You don't need a hipster.
Yeah,
on the
you
show.
need the fat guy and the black guy. You don't need the hipster crying after sex guy.
Matt, we have an email from Reggie. I know you were a huge... you cried for a week when Aaron Hernandez hung himself in his prison cell, if he did hang himself. I like the idea that the most troubled man in America couldn't possibly hang himself. It must be a conspiracy.
Yeah, he just had a hole in his brain the size of a golf ball.
Yes.
Hanging himself would be like the 30th least weird thing he's ever done.
Yes. There's always those TV shows where like one of those crime shows where the guy hangs himself. They go like, this guy was the most stable guy ever. Why would he hang himself? But Aaron Hernandez was the least stable guy in the world. So he probably tried to hang himself like
possibly least stable guy in the world.
Yes, he was.
How many things can be weird with you? Gang member,
yes.
crystal meth addict, murdered at least 3 people. I think 3.
Probably ordered more murders
on record.
At least was associated with many more murders.
Ordered more murders. Married, baby.
Multiple
promiscuous homosexual.
Promiscuous homosexual and promiscuous baby maker too, which is kind of odd that he was actually banging women and men.
Gang member while multimillionaire.
Yes.
Living in Boston.
Naked guy in the locker room.
Yeah, that was my favorite part.
Yes.
I just want to warn you, Hernandez is going to talk about being bathed by his mother. He's going to have his genitalia out in front of you while you're sitting on your stool. He's going to talk about gay sex. Just do your best to ignore it, even walk away.
He would... The fact that he would, that people in the Patriots would warn new players of the Patriots that he's going to sit on a stool next to you with his balls hanging out and talk gay shit.
You make the team, you're super psyched,
yeah.
And then the veteran with the receding hairline comes over and says, and this was in the story, he's going to put his dick in your face.
Yes.
He's going to talk explicitly about gay sex.
Yes.
And these are the least of your problems.
Yes. It was, to me, it was the image of the naked 250-pound guy on a stool. It was just like the worst for me. When I read those stories, I don't. A couple of years ago, they tried to stop it, but naked guys in San Francisco were sitting on all the bus benches, just naked dudes like up Market Street with because it wasn't illegal apparently to be naked in San Francisco, to walk around naked, and so these guys who were like weird, creepy, sort of gay, sort of homeless nudist guys would like walk around naked. And everyone was like, okay, well, that's fair. We'll allow that. But then they started like sitting on the bus benches naked. And then was like, okay, that's got to stop. Like, we cannot have them sitting on benches with their bare ass where other people sit. Just not cool anymore.
That's interesting because I wouldn't have a problem with them walking around. But the sitting with the balls,
yes,
I would. Yeah, I had the same.
Would you sit on a bus
reaction.
bench after a guy was sitting there naked, bare ass?
I wouldn't sit on a bus bench if you gave me $1,000.
And by the way, these I just assume, and I saw some blurred photos. They were all bears. Those are all big fat dudes. Like,
that's what I'd assume.
Yes, it wasn't like the male model types. The attractive men did not need to be gay to get hooked up in San Francisco.
No,
they didn't need to be walking around naked. It was like these fat, like expressive, like hippie dudes. So Aaron Hernandez. So Reggie wants to know: is it okay if we don't feel bad for Aaron Hernandez, even after learning from the Spotlight team, the Boston Globe Spotlight investigative team, this horrific origin story for Aaron Hernandez about probably the worst trailer trash family you've ever heard of before. Here's a dude who's clearly gay, who's got a massively homophobic, virulently homophobic father. Weird shit with the parents doing all sorts of drugs and screwing around and making babies with other people.
Is he from the Miami area?
No, he's actually from Connecticut.
Oh, Connecticut. That's
Bristol,
right.
Near ESPN headquarters.
Huh.
But he went to then he went to Florida to play football. He was obviously a very athletically talented guy. Still in a gang. Urban Meyer covered up a number of antisocial incidents that Aaron Hernandez had. I mean, the guy was like screaming for help.
He may know of murders, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he's a serial killer.
Oh, Hernandez?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, Meyer might know of some other murders.
He probably used Hernandez to order some hits. I don't know. Like it's one of the things, like when you cover up, like, I don't know, I guess what coaches cover up all sorts of, like, the kids flunking out of class, or he stole like a car, or they got smoking weed and all stuff like that. But probably violent felonies he was covering up for him on.
Yeah.
Which is like, how good can a player be? I mean, college football is just disgusting. And then, of course, the guys from Florida were like leaking to the NFL, don't draft this guy because he's a fucking walking time bomb of fucking violent behavior. And of course, Bill Belichick takes him because Bill Belichick is the actual mercenary of the NFL.
Good coach.
He is a great coach.
I mean, Hernandez had like 4 really good seasons.
He did. I think Belichick would take Charles Manson if he had good speed on the outside. He really is he's just a purely, absolutely pragmatic person. Just doesn't give a shit as long as he wins.
Yeah.
And that's what Hernandez was. So here's the question. So the spotlight story shows how Hernandez was, first of all, you could be feel bad from, I guess, being gay in an utterly masculine culture. And that obviously fucked them up quite a bit. I like the fact that people say that no NFL guys are gay, because obviously there's gay guys in the NFL. Not as out there as Hernandez, perhaps. And then he grew up with this horrible family, all this other shit. And I think the idea of the story was you're supposed to kind of feel bad for this guy, but he didn't actually rise above his circumstances. He just became a violent killer and sort of drug addict.
Yeah. Well, it goes like my theory, and I should probably contact some, because you can email anyone at an elite institution,
yes,
and they're so bored that they'll email you back of your fucking retarded questions.
Yes, they will. Because there's someone who has a full-time job to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and they're just flattered that anyone fucking
communications assistant
thought of them.
Yes.
No, the real guy. You
who are you talking about? Like Hernandez? We're gonna use alive?
No. I'm saying, sorry. So I always wonder about this, and I've thought about it a lot and never figured out an answer. So, like, there's insane people. Yeah. So Hernandez, probably CTE.
Oh, CTE also
for
as well,
sure.
yes.
But there's people that have CTE, like Junior Seau, who's, I think we could probably agree, a good guy. And it's
was a good guy.
Was a good guy.
Yes.
It's like, oh, yeah. Well, he did some weird shit, I don't know. We were at the restaurant. He ordered the ice cream, fucking poured it on his head.
Yes.
Well, we get him the fuck out of there. Then he got real hammered, went to sleep. He didn't, start killing, become a serial killer. So I'm saying, if you're insane, it's the insanity plea. I've never understood the insanity plea. I've never understood it.
Well, the insanity plea only should only go to premeditation, which is if you're truly fucking nuts, you can't actually premeditate something, right? Like if you think someone's legitimately think someone's the devil and God and the dog is speaking to you and telling you to kill them, you should still go away forever in some sort of fashion.
Yeah.
But it's not you may not be an actually evil. You may not be a person who likes to hurt people, who actually gets off on hurting people. You may actually believe you're doing God's work.
Well, either way, I don't want you released early.
No, I don't want you ever released.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, you could have 2 crazy people, and how come one crazy person, let's just say, you'd scan the neurons. I don't know how you would do that, but you determine that they're equally damaged.
Right.
How come one guy is doing crystal meth and creeping out his teammates and becoming a serial killer, and the other guy drives his car too fast? It will never be explained.
No, but I mean, I think if you had the WWE guys, let's say 1 out of 50 will slaughter their whole families.
Yeah, that's about right.
Yes,
a little low, but
or just kill, or the female China will kill themselves. Basically murder themselves. But I would assume brain damage works somewhat randomly, which is that it may actually just, obviously Hernandez was a violent guy before CTE. He probably had a pathology that went back before football, even where he was in this shitty fucking family environment. And he was,
but there's still people that it's obviously the old argument, but maybe some people are inherently psychopaths.
I think some people are inherently violent, but I do think that the CT definitely, the roids and the CT definitely promote that. I would think if Aaron Hernandez was a barista, it'd probably be less likely that he would have killed people.
Yeah.
Than if he went into football, where For one, he was allowed to do all the steps leading up to murder and got away with it. So he was never put away as a young kid where he might have got worse, but he might have got some therapeutic intervention. Like literally, like he commits like crime. You see him on the scale of crimes and they just like let it go. Of course he's going to start killing people. He's a violent dude. If they put him away like at 16 and on fucking drugs, maybe on fucking some kind of bipolar drugs or whatever, maybe he's like just one of those guys who just like wanders the street and just like spouts on bus stations and stuff like that. I mean, most of the homeless people are not violent. They just talk to themselves. Yeah. And then a couple of them just lash out with knives every now and then.
Well, that's why when I see anyone talking to themselves, I give them a wide berth just in case it's that one day where they decide to kill someone. But like you talk to your average dude, like in the Midwest, like your average fucking Roll Tide guy, and it's always like, well, I don't understand why these football players can't behave themselves. It's like they first of all, they all have brain damage, and they're trained in violence. So if you go up to Joe Mixon in a bar where he's the only black guy and you punch him in the face, he's been taught to react aggressively. So if he then punches you and knocks your ass out, I couldn't say I didn't see it coming.
Well, he's probably naturally aggressive. That's how he got to the top of his sport.
Yeah, and that.
And also, it's just like
he's decided it'd be fun to ram your head into other people.
It's like people that get to the top of politics or top of law, whatever. Or top of business. They're all basically assholes because that's how you get to the top of your profession, which is you sell everybody out. You're more aggressive and ambitious than everybody else. You don't care that, like, this is the whole thing in the Silicon Valley where the reason guys are all the executives is because they don't mind not having friends and being considered assholes. Whereas women are more like concerned about their reputation of being kind and stuff like that.
Well, I don't know if that's a great analogy. It's football, as much as like the commentators want to make you think that it is and try and fool you into it. Not a thinking man's game.
No.
By any stretch of
Maybe
the imagination.
For the quarterbacks, perhaps, and that's about it.
Oh, they have to memorize like fucking 30 things. Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
Well,
that's the other narrative that they throw at you. Tom Brady's like a genius.
No.
Yeah. Tom Brady, he'd be working at Tesla if it wasn't for the fucking NFL. Like, get the fuck out of here.
They do that test. What's the test called? They give the guys at the combines.
I was going to
say the mental test. It's like an acute. It's not
aptitude.
It's not a scholastic aptitude test, but it's more of like a situational type thing.
Yeah. What's it called? Yeah.
The guys who score better than that tend to be better quarterbacks in the NFL. They may not know how to count, but they can assess situations, moving situations pretty well. They're more strategic thinkers.
Yeah, but so that test, when they say this, when the pundits say that doesn't mean the guys that passed it are super smart. It means the guys that failed it are fucking retarded.
That's true too. But I think certain guys are prone to more strategic thinking. Like they just in a situation they think they have better ideas, like not smart ideas, but they know how to react better. Right. Versus guys who just freeze, or don't.
Oh, it's Wonderlic is what it's called.
Wonderlic, the Wonderlic test. Yes, none of them are. I would imagine none of them are scored 4 digits on their SATs. I gotta get off Aaron Hernandez. It's so sad he killed himself, and now his wife, the girl, is remarried, and then the kid stuff, and they're whatever else it is.
Dude, fuck his wife, by the way.
Yes.
Like this fucking whore. She's got the baby, and she's trying to not give his contract money to the people that he killed, basically.
Yeah,
I believe his
$6 million or something outstanding.
Sister-in-law's brother, if I'm not mistaken. I haven't read it in a while.
Otherwise, he's been convicted of killing.
Yeah,
because he was never technically convicted of killing the 2 guys at the bar because he killed himself before the appeal.
Yeah, no, Lloyd, the guy that he dragged out to a field and murdered. She's claiming she's trying to get out of it, and as if she didn't know he was a flaming cocksmoker.
Yes, and violent as fuck,
and a serial killer.
Yes, I'm sure she did, but he was a good provider. That's
Shouldn't you just give them the bulk of the money? Like, I'm not saying save a few bucks so you can get your feet on the ground and get a job, but like, how do you feel about yourself keeping the money?
Well, I assume if you're having sex with a gay, violent Aaron Hernandez and producing a child, you're pretty much in it for the practical benefits.
Well, that's my point.
Yes.
She's a fucking piece of shit.
Matt, this is our segment called This Week in Crazy White Privileged Chicks. White privileged women. I love, are you familiar with Camille Paglia? Is that her name?
No.
The feminist. She's an old school feminist in the 60s, 70s, but she was the wing of sex positive feminists.
Okay.
She always wrote about sex in like the 70s and 80s and into the 90s. She's probably like 70 now. She taught at had one of those teaching things at one school where they have the feminist teachers. But she was not the, like, men are evil, women are being oppressed kind of thing. She was more of like the feminist of like sexual awakening.
She was like, I'm super rad because I fuck a lot of dudes.
Well, she was a lesbian, but yeah, other than that.
Oh,
but she told women to fuck men. She was like that Madonna era, like in the 80s era, like, women should have as much sex as they want and not be be sluts, basically. She was Amber Rose before, yeah. She was cool because she was a sex positive woman. She said, love men, just love their dicks and get off on them and do whatever you want, like women shouldn't be ashamed of their being sluts, basically. That was her feminist wing. And she basically has come on more recently to ask about the Me Too, and these old school feminists are kind of angry at these young white women because they've turned into a women versus men thing, and men are all evil, and they're all rapists, and they're all shit like that. And she's written a book about saying, women, you're just making yourself fucking miserable. You're just making yourself miserable.
Right.
Most men aren't like that. And also, by the way, her point, which I thought was actually somewhat brilliant, was that, like, if you're a college-educated white woman and someone does something wrong to you, you need to take control. That's your situation. You need to take control of it. Like, you need to report it, out it, defend yourself in the moment or immediately after the fact, not shy away and wait 10 or 15 years to name somebody. And she separated that from, like, working class women and minority women who are in really bad situations, who, like, maybe their boss is touching them, but they need the job to feed their family or shit like that. They're disenfranchised. They have very little power. And oftentimes they have to put up with this bullshit because their economic security is at stake, versus these professional women in New York and LA or whatever else, where they are just, they're playing the victim role, but they're not, like, confronting men if there is an actual situation. I thought it was kind of a brilliant setup she did, which is like saying, as I always point out, the women who are complaining the most are the women with all the power. Like, they actually have means. Like the woman who's a senior writer for HuffPo has a lot of means, right? She can out somebody. They can create shitty media men's lists. She can go to the police. She's going to be believed by everybody. Even if she's not telling the truth, she's going to be believed by everybody. If you're Christine Ford, Blasey Ford, you're going to be believed by at least half the country and 80% of women. So you have a lot of power to stick up for yourself, and that was her point. And not all women have that, which I think she smartly said. But it seems to be young, college-educated white women are just fucking nuts these days. So I picked a few out for this week in crazy white privilege chick week, because they do complain more than anybody. And by the way, I don't know if you noticed, there's been 6 or 7 luncheons this past couple weeks in Hollywood. Variety, Hollywood Reporter, they've all had luncheons for empowering women. And as someone pointed out on the dais, I don't know, it was Jennifer Lopez talking about how proud she was of some other super, successful woman and stuff like that, and for standing up to the men and, like, overcoming obstacles. And someone pointed out there was about $800 million worth of value on the stage of these, like, 6 women, like, really empowering, like, really the women who struggle the most. Like, each of them was worth more than $100 million, calling each other heroes for standing up in their lives to potential victimhood and stuff like that.
I've noticed that like, when you talk about, like, hardcore lesbian, like this woman that you're speaking of, who have accepted themselves, and I'm for whatever reason, if it's genetic or environmental, like they're lesbians and they're fully comfortable with that. Never been rude to me.
No, it's
the rich, fucking unhappy chick with the minivan that's always a fucking cunt.
Yeah, I think that there are. Everyone points to the college experience, how much the college experience has changed now, and it really teaches these girls, young women, to be really angry at men. Like, to really there's a real victim culture there. They're like, even though you're from a potentially privileged or middle class, upper middle class background, and you're white in America, and women used to be historically oppressed in some means, you're no longer, but they really still teaching this real victimhood ideology, and the schools bend over backwards to condone that. So when women graduate and they're marching at school and they're doing all this other shit and they're spitting on professors and they're claiming victimhood and stuff like that, white, like, well-off white chicks have now burned into their skulls that they are victims of something. And so their identity is wrapped up in this victimhood thing. It's like sort of how they relate to one another. You don't see a lot of black women or Hispanic women holding oppression marches. It's always like, like police brutality or immigration or something. There's some cause behind it. It's not just a general patriarchy man keeping us down type thing.
No.
Because that's all these women have. That's the only thing I can point to is that old white.
There's got to be something, some scapegoat, basically.
Yes. I have this theory I've been pushing, which is probably totally wrong, but that like human beings are drawn to like suffering. Like you have to have suffering in your life because suffering is actually good for you because it forces you to change and adapt and become better. Like when you suffer, you like as a species, you adapt and you change, and you get better, and you evolve. And so when you have a group of people who have really no suffering, they will create suffering because it's almost like a need, like a human need they have. Like you crave suffering in a way.
Well, I think I agree with you. I might phrase it a little bit differently in that you need a purpose.
Yeah, you need a purpose.
You need
obstacle to overcome.
Yeah, you need a reason to live.
Yeah, so they do those like surveys where everybody in high school claims that they were bullied. Like 100%, even the bullies claim they were bullied, because that's sort of the perspective you have. Is you're always the victim perspective, and I think part of that is just human nature, which is like you're supposed to see yourself as an underdog. I like when the Yankees or the cow, whoever it is, the team like the Warriors, we're the underdogs. No one expected us to be here. Like,
oh yeah, it's always that.
Like someone, and they always pull that article from the paper, like LeBron says he's going to kill us. Guys, come on, we're the underdogs. Let's get up. Like,
oh, dude, the Republican Party now is playing the victim really hard. Anytime they lose something after, subverting the law, let's say, anytime they don't get their way, they're oppressed. Oh, they're going to take away Christmas. What the fuck are you talking about?
That plays. I think it plays in the human nature though, which is like, that's politics obviously, but I think people want to feel like they are oppressed. Right? There's a need to feel like you're a victim.
Yeah,
there's a soothing quality to it, and I think
someone's conspired. They're going to take our guns away.
Yes,
no one's ever even really brought that up. I mean, there are some sort of tame gun control laws. But
by the way, it would be really hard for the unarmed to take away the armed people with guns. Like, okay, we're the unarmed people coming to take away your guns. Armed people, like that's never really worked.
Well, they think jackbooted thugs are gonna,
Well, they have to make those people up because it's not like Chuck Schumer is going to come and take your guns away from you with like a clipboard. It's just not going to.
And by the way, if the government decided to take your guns away for whatever reason, I don't care how many guns you actually have.
Yeah.
They would be able to do that really easily because they'd, what the government does is they get a tank and they plow into your house.
But they can only do that one. But yeah, they've done Waco and Ruby Ridge and stuff. But they can only do that. That's sort of a big effort. It's not like they can 80 million people own guns. They can only do that to like 10 houses. So it's like
no, they could do some raids. But the point is they don't have any intention of doing that.
No, they don't. But every wacko or even semi-wacko gun owner is just going to hide their guns. They're not going to take away their guns.
Well, what's the difference? Like, how many guns can you shoot? So, like, I get having a gun.
Yes,
I understand that. If you have 100 guns and there are 2 people in your family in your household,
yes.
So when the government comes. Are you shooting all the guns? Are you loading up all of them?
I just don't think it's like sort of like it's like when they always talk about rounding up the illegal immigrants, like 20 million illegal immigrants. You just can't possibly do it. You can't take guns away from 60 million people. You can't stop people from smoking weed. 60 million people from smoking weed. There's always stuff. It's just rhetoric because you can't. The numbers are so great. You can't stop it from happening.
Well, at least with weed, if I was I guess we're getting off track. If I was an immigrant, I'd be somewhat perturbed by what's going on right now. But by the way, I don't mean a Swedish immigrant, Mexican immigrant. Or
the odds of you being rounded up are extremely small, especially if you've been here for a long time. And the odds of you being arrested for weed are very small.
But at least it is a potential legitimate threat.
Yes. Well, rappers do get arrested for guns all the time, Matt. If you're a rapper, you definitely get arrested for guns. Can I get into my privileged white chicks?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
All right. So privileged white chicks of the week. I have 3 this week, Matt. Amy Schumer is the first one. Amy Schumer was interviewed. By the way, I don't know where Amy Schumer went. I guess after 3 failed movies in a row, they just kind of like stopped publicizing you so much. She did get arrested at the Kavanaugh march.
She got arrested, and the point. So I understand a civil protest, and I understand people get arrested on purpose. But when the cop says, and you're being filmed,
yes.
Do you want to get arrested? And you go, yes.
Yes.
That kind of takes a little bit of
and she was wearing a prison-type jumpsuit to make it really, really effective. But so Amy Schumer this week explained, her big thing this week is how women, especially attractive women, it sucks to be a woman, Matt. It sucks to especially be an attractive woman.
Is she putting herself in the...
No, she did not. Self-deprecation, she said she's happy she's not a hot chick, because hot chicks especially...
She's not happy about that.
No, she's not at all. Hot chicks especially have it really rough in America. Because Matt...
They have it better than anyone.
Yes, they do. Well, I mean, her point that people sexualize them is absolutely correct. Of course they do.
Yeah.
I mean,
and then they get several benefits from being sexualized.
Well, that's the thing. It's like if you're a 6'4", 250-pound black dude in the South and you can run a 4.4 40, you're going to be objectified as a linebacker for Alabama.
Yeah,
they're going to say, dude, from the age of 12, they're going to say you're going to be a football player in the SEC, and you get objectified as a piece of meat. But then again, you get to then make $20 million as opposed to living in a gang-infested, shitty neighborhood for the rest of your life.
You have something that not everyone has.
Yeah,
and therefore you get certain benefits.
You have physical attributes that provide you a great lifestyle, but you are objectified. People shoot you with needles. They put you out there when you're injured. They don't give a shit about you as a person. But you do get a lot of career benefits, let's say, out of the whole deal. And so that's Amy Schumer, crazy thing. Keira Knightley, the actress in the Pirates of the Caribbean, of all things, has now said she's not going to allow her young daughter, to watch any Disney fairy tale movies like Cinderella, because they promote the idea that a woman should wait for a man to save them, to rescue them in their lives.
Yes. How did it come up that anyone gave a shit about this retarded statement? Is this just an interview?
She's been doing multiple interviews. I think she has a book out. She has a new female-led film project out. Because last week her thing was how she was angry at Kate Middleton for appearing to be too made up and too good after having babies, as opposed to showing all her scars and the travesty and the horribleness of giving birth, and that she should come out there with her fucking ripped perineum and
close up of the episiotomy.
Yeah, exactly. And
you really can't have it both ways, can you?
No.
I mean, what's wrong with the woman looking good and caring about herself? And
especially when you're a public figure and your entire job is to be a public figure. It's not like she's an iron worker.
I don't know anything about Keira Knightley. What is she so angry about?
She is just taking on this feminist role, which is what I think we talk about. Women need to invent these obstacles and oppression when they don't have any. When you're a 33-year-old white film actress, you may have personal problems in your personal life, but you don't really have any systemic institutional problems, obstacles facing you. You can pretty much do whatever you want with your life.
Is she British or?
Yeah, she's British. Either Australian or British, same thing as far as I'm concerned.
So she won't let her daughter
watch Cinderella because Cinderella is saved from her life of horror by a prince going to the ball to meet the prince. Which, by the way, okay, yes. I mean, if that's like your feminist story in 2018, although Meghan Markle just did that with Prince Harry, of course. But if that's your story of yeah, that's not very feminist. I understand that you go to the ball and meet a prince who sweeps you out of your horrible life, or like Pretty Woman as a story in 2018.
Yeah.
But obviously these are time period historical pieces. These are fairy tales. So they're not like, if it was set in the modern world, I can see how people would say well, we don't want Meghan Markle's story where she quits her job to marry Prince Harry and wear hats and go to parties and stuff. That's not a very female positive story. But these are obviously contextually fairy tales of a different time and place when that was what the women wanted to do, was to come out of drudgery and marry the prince and live happily ever after. And you can either show your child that and give them some context, or just censor and ban all content because it doesn't fall into line with your female empowerment story for a 5-year-old.
Yeah, because what's the alternative? You're just showing them feminist propaganda, and the kid's like, this cartoon sucks. All my friends like Cinderella.
Yes.
And you're like, well, you got to learn. As if kids are even absorbing the plot at that age. Aren't they just, it's colorful.
It's colorful, and by the way, I think every single woman who basically responded to the story said, I watched this stuff, and it was fine. I understood that, I did when I was 5, I wanted to be a princess. I wanted to marry a prince and live in a castle. But by the time I was 8 or 9, I realized that wasn't real life, and I had other dreams. I wanted to be an astronaut. I wanted to be whatever. So if you're 25 and you're watching Cinderella, it's kind of weird.
Well, I think even in Cinderella, and I haven't watched it in quite some time, but I believe it's self-aware. It's factoring in this theme of the, women can be more than this. It's not it's not just a straight up marry a rich guy and live a happy. Like I'm pretty sure Cinderella is like sympathetic to the plight of Cinderella.
Yeah, she's abused by her stepsisters, and she has to scrub the floors and the toilets all day long. And then it's a fairy tale. Then she gets this chance the fairy godmother comes and gives her the thing, and she goes to the ball and meets the prince.
It's kind of a cool story. Like Cinder. So Cinder, that used to be like a German pejorative. Cinderwench is like the nasty maid that lived in the basement, and then Ella is like this elegant. So it was like she was kind of like a amalgamation of two different people.
She was the adopted slave girl, like the stepmom and stuff like that, and she was made the cackling older sisters got to go to the ball, and she didn't. She was basically, it was like a Charles Dickens type story. She was like the foster kid in the family who was abused, basically.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like anything to censor. I mean, so what is she showing? Because if you go down that route, I mean, now is she going to become Amish? Like, what is the kid doing? No, she's going to show her shitty feminist empowerment movies, and then the daughter's going to go like, I don't know, why am I supposed to hate men? I don't get this, because girls at 4 or 5 years old love boys, and they love princes, and they love all that stuff. It seems to be genetically coded that girls at 5 want to live in castles and be princesses, because that stuff, people like think that's like forced on girls, having raised a girl, and boys too. It's what boys like to smash trucks into walls, and girls like to have tea parties and pretend they live in castles. And I don't think that's something the parents force on them. That's that gender division. No, Disney, the people at Disney have been smart for a long time.
Yes.
They know what kids want to see.
Yes.
And that's why they have built a multi-billion-dollar company.
I can see like saying, okay, all the princesses shouldn't be white. They should be Hispanic or black and stuff like that, as they've started to do. I can see they shouldn't all be white. Sure. But they're still all girls. They're still all women, and they still, at 5 years old, are still all 5-year-old girls who still dream of being, not all of them, but a lot of them dreaming of being married to the prince and living in a castle and having fabulous clothes and all that kind of stuff. It just sort of genetically coded. So,
well, I guarantee someone at Disney who thinks they're real fucking smart and is making a nice 6-figure salary is considering greenlighting a gay Cinderella.
Yes, they are. They are.
And it will bomb
horrendously. They are. They're trying to move the gay. I mean, again, I don't care. These are time and place stories. If you had a 2018 story about a Cinderella type fabulous girl going to the ball in Hollywood, and there wasn't gay characters, I'd be a little concerned, because we all know gay guys would be part of that story, and we all know Hispanic women would be part of that story, whatever else it is, or more empowered women would be part of that story. But it doesn't make sense in a time and place from the day of castles and carriages and stuff like that you would change revisionist history and pretend that she was a lawyer, and that she was like representing the prince in his legal affairs in like the 16th century.
No, it doesn't. And what about, and I'm not an expert on Disney by any means, but wasn't Snow White like a really self-assured woman who looked after a bunch of tiny men?
The dwarfs. There might have been a little rape going.
I'm not really.
Matt, I'm missing my last and final crazy white chick of the week, and she's not a young. She's 70 years old. She is Victoria Bissell Brown. Let me start off by saying, any woman with 3 names? Any guy with 3 names is a serial killer, because they've given 3 names when they report on the serial killing. Yeah. They all of a sudden have to be known by their middle name.
Or an actor.
Yeah, or occasionally an actor, but generally it's like John Wayne Gacy. It's always, they have to identify their middle names, not because it does make them sound more serial killer, but they want to make sure that other people named John Gacy aren't attacked for the rest of their lives as serial killers.
I disagree. I think that they convene and decide what sounds scariest.
You think so?
Because Ted Bundy, there's something scary about the word Bundy.
So they didn't give him a middle name, you mean?
No, it sounded scary already.
You may be right. When I see a woman with 3 names, I know that she is a very empowered woman, and I'm not gonna like her. Like I told my wife when we got married, she's like, I don't know if I should take her. I don't care if you take my last name. That's a very archaic, thing. I don't give a shit. Just don't have 2 names, last names. Don't do the hyphenated name. Yeah. Keep your name. Take my name. Call yourself whatever the fuck you want to call yourself, but don't have the hyphenated name.
I agree.
Have you ever seen like on Facebook where like there's a group of women talking, they all have the hyphenated names, and there's so many names in like the list, you can't tell what's going on.
Well, like in sports, because I'm pretty sure what's happened is the parents got savvy because they're all divorced, and so they're like, well, fuck that. Like if it comes down to a fucking contract dispute.
Yes.
So all the guys like Gilchrist Alexander, who's the guy in the Clippers now? Anyway, point being, like the jersey can't even accommodate.
No, I remember Maurice Jones-Drew changed his name from Maurice Drew to Maurice Jones, and back to something else. It was
But it wasn't like that back in the 80s and 90s. Your name was just John Stark.
Yes.
Like now, it's got to be that the parents are getting in on this.
Fighting over the money.
Yeah.
Like Lonzo Ball, that kind of thing.
It's got to be.
So Victoria Bissell Brown wrote this great op-ed this week, Matt, in the Washington Post. She's a retired college professor from a Northeastern college. I've never heard of before.
Ugh.
Grinnell. Horrible. And she basically, I think you read this.
Grinnell.
Her piece was called "Thank You for Not Raping Us, Good Men, but It's Not Enough." And her whole piece was like, whereas women would savage men who are like Weinstein or sexually assaultive type guys, this new wave of these crazy white women are now assaulting the men who are actually good men, but are not doing enough to change the way men as a gender respond to women.
What's the guy supposed to do?
Her husband of 40 years, her op-ed is about how she exploded at her husband of 40 years, berated him for no reason other than the fact that he's a man and can't possibly understand how men have treated women basically historically or just sort of amorphously throughout the existence of the universe.
She wrote an essay which was somehow published in the fucking Washington Post.
Yes.
Which is a problem. So it was about how she blew up at her husband for something he did, acknowledging that it wasn't his fault.
Yes.
She didn't name the incident.
No.
So it could have been anything.
I think she just said the way he was looking at her when she said something made her understand that he would never understand what it was like to be how women suffer, like sort of just generally. Like she went out of her way to say he's one of the good men and he's a feminist and he donates to the right causes and attends marches and reads the right magazines.
She's already going above and beyond.
Yes.
And this is obviously a lesbian married to a gay man. But assuming that's not the case, if your wife did that to you, or if my girlfriend did that to me, I would say you need to check yourself.
Yes. Check your baggage at the door.
You need to go take a fucking walk.
Yes.
I might go get a drink. This will not fucking happen.
Yeah.
Again.
I would say go to your meetings and scream about how horrible men are. But not in my living room.
But we would never be involved with a woman. There would be many red flags prior.
Oh, they've been married for 40 plus years. So he's had this lecture a million times and he puts up with it for whatever reason. But literally what she's saying is that like men are now responsible for not, even the good men who are good to women are responsible for mankind as a gender for not being better to women. And that you need to reshape the way men think and act and boys are raised and all this stuff that is now your burden. And it's not enough just to say, I'm a good guy who's never hurt a woman before. And in fact, I donate to all the right causes and all this sort of shit.
And this being published in the Washington Post, this is the most abstract, loony. It's straight lunacy. I mean, her premise, it doesn't make any sense. It has no practical application. It's just like a crazy person yelling into the ether.
Yes.
And somehow the Washington Post decides this is, of all the opinions in the world, of all the things to talk about and ways to sort of couch things, that this cunt,
yes,
who's not self-aware of the fact that she's...
You're not one of the good men, Matt. Yes.
I am one of the good men, because someone needs to fucking tell you that, A, no one else besides your husband gives a fuck about what you're saying. She doesn't understand. It's an entitled cunt, like just screaming in anger, of displaced anger. Why is this published in the fucking opinions section when so much is going on and there are people with regular voices that could, like myself, for example?
Because I think she represents a actual strong wing of female academia, media, whatever else. Oppression. That's why she's on my crazy white chick list, by the way. This is not an out there idea among this fairly influential group of demographic.
But it's a small minority of people. It's an insulated capsule.
There was a guy who quit Facebook recently, a senior engineer from Facebook, and he's like one of these Aspie guys. I like Aspie guys because
I love Aspie guys
because they can't lie.
Yeah,
they can't lie. So he actually quit Facebook because he said he doesn't like the way Facebook is censoring conversations now. They're censoring out hate speech under the guise of hate speech. They're censoring all sorts of conversations now and accounts and everything else under the guise of it's hateful or harmful speech. And he said, like, Facebook to me, he's been there a long time, has always been open conversation, right? It's supposed to be open conversation. Even if people deem it uncomfortable or even sort of they deem it hateful, it's supposed to be on there. And his point was he's talked to like senior leadership, like the senior people at Facebook, and they all agree with him. They're all on board with this like free, open world, free speech mantra, everything goes, because we want an open dialogue. But he said there's a group of people in Facebook that have formed more recently out of college and stuff like that are so anti-free speech, that are so much into censoring hate speech. And it's he claims it's a small minority of Facebook, but they're so virulent and so aggressive, and like they're shutting down conversations, calling people racist or homophobes or things like that if they don't agree with them, that they're actually getting their way at Facebook. Like they're actually dominating. These tech nerds who run the place are so scared of them because they're like have all these, they're so aggressive in calling people names and calling them out and threatening them that they do, like an Antifa type of thing, that they are actually conceding to the fact that like they're like the people like doing all the censorship on Facebook, the senior leadership, they don't want it, but they're so scared of this group within their own company because they write such harsh emails and do all this harsh stuff on message boards and call out the people who are like allow like anti-Muslim stuff or stuff they deem as hateful, that they're just scared shitless of them. So it is a minority, Matt, but I think they're very powerful within these different institutions.
Yeah.
Because they are willing to like say you raped them. So that's a big thing. All right, Matt, that's our show for today. You got something you wish to pimp and promote?
MattRalston.net. Could we quickly address Kawhi Leonard's laugh?
No, we don't have time. I have to go.
I just feel like I saw like the Candyman come back to life or something. MattRalston.net.
I'll put that in the show on audio tape.
I'm a fun guy.
Oh, Instagram, the Matt Ralston. That seems to be pretty popular these days.
Get off your cold, man. Get off your cold. This is Lex. Last minute. Talk to you next week.
Who lives in the east neath the willow tree? Sexual harassment. Panda who explains sexual harassment to you and me. Sexual harassment. Panda, don't say that, don't touch there, don't be nasty, says the silly bear. He's gonna tell you what's right and wrong. Sexual harassment. Panda.